I am a director choreographer. I started out as a dancer, classical ballet dancer, and transitioned away from that to become a classical ballet choreographer. Um, that sort of all happened quite early on in my dance career. So I left dancing when I was 28 and had very luckily an abundance of work to kind of move into, and felt like a very natural transition into choreography, something that I've been doing since I was little. Um, and from there moved on into directing and choreographing theatre. And that's currently where I'm at the moment in my 50th year. There was quite a lot that sort of contributed, I think, to the beginning of my working with you in 2017. It was sort of, funnily enough, it was kind of propelled into it through something physical that happened to me, because I'd broken my foot. First time I'd ever broken a part of my body, and had stepped backwards and fallen into the orchestra pit. I can laugh now, but at the time not so funny. Very luckily there was nothing in the pit, landed on my feet, but fractured my ankle. And so that sort of slowed me down in a way that really made me think about kind of where I was career-wise, creatively, what I was up to at the time, what was coming up, and actually realized that I was a bit stuck, and had been, again, very lucky because there'd been an abundance of work, but was feeling a little bit like, oh, am I just sort of on this kind of treadmill of being very capable at sort of turning out, delivering upon the promises of making new ballets, but was I really at that in that moment sort of creatively inspired to be doing the work that I was doing, and having this bit of time to kind of think about this. And also I was working with the London Company of an American in Paris, which was wonderful, but also frustrating because I couldn't be up on my feet. So I was finding myself kind of diving a little bit more into the directing side of being director and choreographer, which is something that initially I'd been quite scared of, and thinking, oh, well, actually, this is lighting a bit of a fire underneath me. But again, I felt like I needed perhaps someone to kind of help guide me towards being a little bit braver about doing that. And so it just felt like a very transitionary moment. And then voila, magical Anna arrived, standing next to me in the Dominion Theatre. I'm like, oh, hello, who are you? um, yeah, so it was really fortuitous. Our meeting, all of those feelings, just felt like it was the right moment.
Yeah, lovely. And you were referred to me, I was recommended to you by a very good friend of yours. When you first found out about what I was doing, was there any skepticism?
There was a little bit of skepticism, only because I just grew up in such a slightly sort of skeptical environment, very stiff upper lip. My dad was always like, yeah, you don't need to go and see a therapist. You don't need to talk to people necessarily about, what's bothering you. Just sort of deal with it. And not that he was, in any way an uncaring person, very loving, but just for a different sort of generation. And we weren't a very communicative family. We didn't talk a lot about our problems. Quite English that way. The way that you presented yourself, the way that you very generously offer up so much of your time at the beginning of the program, even before a commitment is made, was really appealing to me, because I thought, oh, this is fantastic, because at the end of these 3 2-hour sessions that we're going to have, that I'm not going to pay for, it's going to be very clear, both to me and to Anna, to you, that this is going to be a collaborative experience. This isn't just going to be someone who's going to sit for 45 minutes and listen to me talk and then probably not say very much and take my money, but actually someone who really is invested, because it's a mutual relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so any skepticism that I had at the beginning, I think, evaporated quite quickly. Perhaps there was more of a skepticism on whether I was going to actually be in the place. I was very much in the place of already judging myself, of already even sort of started on the process with you, on the journey with you. The skepticism was probably whether I was going to stick it out, or whether I was going to actually be good at it. Rather than being skeptical at all of, of you, because, I felt a very strong connection with you right from the get-go.
Yeah. What would you say, sort of, did that dissipate quite quickly once the work started, or did that sort of the skepticism you had about your own capacity to be inside of coaching?
No,
did you hold on to that? Did you hold on to that for a long time?
For a really long time. Yeah. And I found myself at the beginning, because it wasn't clear to me where we were going for a really long time, like maybe even a year. Like it took a long time. Because it was so interesting being in a position where I was actually having to really start to be quite honest with myself, and learn how to actually talk about things that were really quite hard to talk about. And I think I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what it was you were doing with me, and what I think, coming from just all those years of self-scrutiny and standing in front of the mirror, and how am I going to do this, and how am I going to make this work, and how am I going to physically be right, and how am I just all that self-scrutiny. Just I was scrutinizing the process, and I was trying to find the pathway, and I'd finish sessions with you and be in equal measures sort of relieved and excited, but also confused, because I was trying to work it all out and I couldn't.
You're already sort of talking about it, because I wanted to, from this point, reflect back and ask you, what was the experience of coaching like as you were going through the process? So yeah, can you sort of carry on from that point? How did it sort of unfold and evolve beyond that point?
This was kind of a bit more of a kind of slowly kind of picking up the breadcrumbs, like following the trail kind of process, rather than at the end of the 2 hours of each session there would be like a da 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 answer. And I think I was looking for that. I think I was looking for kind of a quick fix in a way at the beginning.
Yeah.
And so that probably played into some of my frustration. And then I realized that everything that we were doing, all the exercises we were doing, all the conversations we were having, and it wasn't till I still keep finding like loose bits of paper with notes that I've written down, because I write things everywhere. Notebooks, there are like sequences of like problem solving on the book of MJ, next to notes that that I'd written when you and I had sessions, next to counts for ballet at the Royal Ballet, next to a restaurant recommendation from someone. And so I'll open notebooks sometimes and I'll just see little things that I'd written down that we had been working on. And so in hindsight and reading those, sort of having little flashbacks to the anxiety that sometimes I had, just thinking, I don't know why we're doing this or why we're going this way. And now sort of having come the other side of coaching, come out the other side of coaching, and understanding that it was very much a it's very much a process over time, and like trying to look for answers very quickly just isn't necessarily the way it's going to work. And maybe it does work that way for some people, but for my brain it was very much a kind of a slow burn, and then, you know, bit of a butterfly kind of coming out of the chrysalis moment. There's quite a lot of the benefits of coaching are not necessarily things that you can talk about. Not that I don't want to talk about them, but actually identify, like actually really put my finger on, because I think there's so much. I think there's so much that unlocks in that process that you're not actually necessarily fully 100% aware of. But for me, it was attachment and fear, I think, were the two like big things for me coming out the other side. God, sounds like we were at storm. We were at sea in a storm or something. But I think, I think attachment and fear around creating, and holding on to this idea of needing to please everyone through my work, and how that perhaps was holding me back from taking risks, being freer as an artist. For me, those were the big takeaways. And actually, like, just massive, really, honestly, just really kind of massive.
Yeah, lovely. I also love what you've said there as well about a certain amount, maybe not even being necessarily aware of it, also consciously aware. Because, you know, one of the things I was going to ask you, and if something comes to you now in me saying this, do feel free to share it, but often what happens inside of coaching is certain seeds are planted that take root, that are kind of growing sort of outside of somebody's consciousness in a way, and they can start to flourish and blossom and unfold within someone many years down the line. And I have had emails, I've said to other people, I've had emails from people sort of 5 years on, just these jubilant emails going, I had to contact you because this thing has happened, which I can see tracks right back to things we were talking about in coaching. And I couldn't see any of it happening inside of the coaching when we were working together, but it's taken root, and I'm experiencing like actual tangible events, you know, and opportunities coming to people. So I think there's something quite beautiful actually in what you've said in terms of the process being an unlocking, some of which we're aware of and some of which we're not, and maybe we become aware of over time. So that's
yeah. I mean, for sure. I think it's I actually recognize quite a lot of the work that we do or that we did together, sort of on a daily basis. We definitely have little Anna kind of just running around up here.
Sorry,
knocking on my thick skull. but I do think there's something quite mysterious and magical about, you know, the things that are going on that you're unaware of, that are, as you say, that perhaps, you know, eventually sort of fall into place. And I think those little moments where suddenly all the wires kind of meet, and you recognize that that is something that perhaps was kind of a little bit shrouded in puzzle during the sessions, has actually led you to just a place where you way you connect with it, I suppose.
Mm. Was there anything that was unexpected that came out of coaching for you?
You know, you did say to me, I was slightly skeptical about the day that we spoke, and you said, you know, quite often this work, not necessarily just working with me, but this work reveals something to you, you know, that in your professional life, that an opportunity, that something might arise because of the work that you're doing. And then of course, like MJ the musical like showed up on my doorstep literally, like, I don't know, like a month after we started working, or maybe 2 months after. And then, you know, a lot of our work kind of did center on that show, and a lot of the fear I had around accepting the job and stepping into, you know, a kind of artistic world, a language that I wasn't necessarily fully kind of comfortable or versed in, really, in other words, stepping outside of my comfort zone. But that, I think, just now looking back on the beginning of that process and my work with you at that time, and how that's really, really contributed to my really being able to like fully inhabit my role as director choreographer on that show and work in a completely different way. I mean, I was forced to have to work in a completely different way. The movement wasn't naturally coming from my body in the way that when I create a ballet it does, because the language is innate and it lives inside of me. Understanding my place in this process, working with working with a lot, surrounding myself with a lot of really talented and brilliant people, and learning how to create, you know, even more from a place of leadership and less from a place of instinct. All of that was really, really surprising and really exciting. And I feel like a lot of that came from the work that we did.
Yeah, brilliant. Excellent. I've just got one final question, I think. If there's anyone out there who does feel skeptical or is sitting on the fence regarding working with me, or choosing this way of working, choosing this form of coaching, what would you say to them right now?
Well, aside from the obvious, which is like, do it. It's worth it. I would say, I would say so much. I think I would say I was quite afraid of the commitment, actually, to it, because you have a very, strong policy of, if you're going to do this work, you have to show up. I think if you are someone who is who needs to know where it is you're going on a journey when you set out, you know, so you're not the sort of person that's willing to just put a backpack on and set off on a backpacking trip with, like, you know, a ferry ticket over to Calais and no idea where you're going from there. I would say put the backpack on and hop on the ferry, because this coaching, for me, this coaching experience took me somewhere took me places that I didn't think it was possible for me to go, quite honestly. And I felt like I was really up against a wall, and I knew that I could continue kind of the creating and living the way that I was living, because I'd been doing it for a while. But it was just so, and it started with just a little tiny little crack in the wall, with the light kind of sort of starting to shine through. But when that wall comes down and you step over onto the other side, it really does, or it did for me anyway, just show me that there's just so much more possibility and so much more that the well of creativity actually is really, really deep if you just have someone who can help you understand that and show you that. That just felt like a whole bunch of wobbly bullshit, but it's how I feel. It really is how I feel. I didn't know where we were going on the journey. I was quite scared of that because I did need to at the time feel like you were going to solve all my problems fairly quickly. By the end of 6 months, we were going to be done and my life was going to be solved, and that wasn't the case. And actually, I think I would also say I could have easily continued my coaching with you beyond the 2 years that we worked together. And who knows, maybe we will work together again. I think about it all the time. And that I think is one of the real beauties of this kind of work, is that there is so much work to be done. There is so much to be discovered. And even at 50 years old, having done a whole bunch in my life and having made a whole bunch of work and had a lot of success, that the possibility and the excitement of the possibility of being able to sort of continue that, I suppose, through hopefully to the end of your life is something that coaching, I think, can help you understand.